Cool. So in this next video, the other strategy that Fachi and I want to talk to you guys about is the way in which recruiters will really try to control the interview timeline.
Mm.
And during the interview stage, I think a lot of candidates underestimate just how much the way in which recruiters control the interview timeline can really affect not only the offer you accept, but how successful your offer negotiation is.
Mm. A very common mistake I want to talk about is when candidates are so eager to get a job that they don't pay attention to their interview schedule. And you will usually see this where candidates are receiving recruiters' messages on LinkedIn, and the company piques their interest, and they just think, okay, I'm just going to interview right away. And then they keep going, and before you know it, you are at offer stage with no leverage and no other companies to consider. And so try as much as possible. Yes, schedule the interviews, especially the first stage, as they come, but be very careful and thoughtful about when you're scheduling the final interviews, especially the virtual on-sites. And you will see that big companies like Google and Facebook, they are very slow. They will usually take even beyond 6 to 8 weeks. And you have, on the other hand, companies like startups being always very, very agile and fast, and being able to do like the interviews and the decision usually within 6 weeks, oftentimes within 3 weeks. And so when you don't realize this as a candidate, you might be in a situation where you already got your startup decisions, you have to make a decision, but then you don't get the chance to hear your big tech company decision. So these are the situations we want you to avoid.
Yeah. Yeah. And this happens especially for professionals, right? Like you're currently employed and you're not really looking, but then this recruiter just kind of piques one of the, 7 messages on LinkedIn you get piques your interest. And so you end up interviewing for one company without doing a comprehensive recruiting process.
Obviously, you shouldn't, refuse interviews if it's going to cause you to lose the offer. But these are very rare situations, right? Like you will see that it's rare because for the large companies, they are usually always hiring. And then for the smaller companies, they usually have a hard time um, finding a very qualified candidate here, like yourself, really easily, right? Like that's not easy for them. And so it's very rare that by trying to control your timeline, you would be in a bad situation. Like it's very, very rare.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be clear, what we're saying is you can do these initial interviews with recruiters, but the interviews with the team, right? Delay, batch, and do those together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So sometimes you do them together. For example, if you're already clear that you are only into startups, right? If you have a mix, right, where you have some big companies and some startups, of course, try your best to start with the slowest ones,
Mhm.
so that you are able to do the startups a little bit later and have most of your decisions together.
Yeah, yeah. And then another important thing to do that candidates don't always realize is that you should practice. You should interview with real companies that are
Mm,
interested in hiring you for practice just to understand the market.
mm,
And I think candidates don't realize actually that a lot of companies do this. They will have a role that they're trying to fill, and they'll interview candidates to even figure out who they're exactly looking for, and they'll
mm.
interview people without any interest of hiring them, and then they'll go back and they'll change the job description and then interview people more seriously. And so don't feel guilty interviewing at companies that you're maybe kind of like kind of only semi interested in, or even not interested. It's your right to understand the market and see what these companies are like, and to interview and get practice.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and if a recruiter is pressuring you for an interview, right, to accelerate the interview, the best thing to say is like, look, I want to be able to be successful in this
Mm,
interview,
mm,
right? And obviously, the recruiter wants you to be successful too, because that's what their job is based off of, is hiring you. And so, if you tell them like, I don't have enough time to prepare, and I'm busy juggling the many of the things that you're probably juggling, I need
mm.
more time to prepare. That's the easiest way to get a recruiter to back off and give you some more time.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of you guys have quite a lot of deadlines. So that's in general, in our experience, it's always been the case that someone is very busy and they have a valid reason to want to postpone those interviews, those final interviews. I want to now share a story of a candidate that is very qualified, right? Like top talent, and in computation. And they were, or they are, right? They interviewed with 3 startups and they are still in that recruiting process. And they also have a big company, Amazon, that they are interviewing with. Now, what happened at the very beginning of them scheduling these interviews, right? We let them know, listen, the startups are really agile, they are really fast. You should probably begin, maybe you practice with one, but the rest keep them for later, right? Like progress in your Amazon process until you are in the final stages before you start interviewing with the other 2 startups that you like. And I think that sometimes candidates don't measure the impact of time, right? And so they just went ahead and they were very eager. They interviewed with all the, all 3 startups at the same time. And while they were also interviewing with Amazon, right? They started everything at the same time. And now what happened? A month later, so right now, they have all 3 startup offers. So great job for them, right? They have offers. But the problem is that Amazon is their top company and they just got into the on-site stage for that company. So now they are running into the risk of not hearing the Amazon decision on time, right? And this is where you see a situation where everybody is frantically trying to negotiate extensions, right? For something that could have been avoided at the beginning if they had been more thoughtful.
Right. And where this hurts the negotiation too is, let's say, for this client, they end up declining the startup offers, or we can't extend the deadlines, and he just gets Amazon offer, right? He no longer has the counter offer leverage to be able to negotiate too.
Yeah, exactly. So this time is very important, right? It really does affect your leverage. I mean, to me, it's like the saddest waste of leverage when you go through the effort, right? In his case, he has gone through the effort of the Amazon process. It's not easy. And then you run into the risk of not even being able to hear that decision on time, or not being able to negotiate that because it just came at the wrong timing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like that's tough. Don't waste your efforts.